we're going to be looking at a slightly more elaborate Korvai today. It's a very, very common structure, but it's a very cool thing to learn. It's the first Korvai that we're looking at that is split into the two main component parts that are very commonly associated with Korvais. The first part involves manipulating the actual theme that you've brought into the composition, that you've sewn into the timeline and you know, employed as an embellishment, and doing the korepu and developing it in the way that we've been looking in the previous play-alongs. And then the second half involves manipulating the syllables ta, ti, ge, na, tom by starting, you know, ta, ti, ge, ta, tom, ta, ti, ge, tom, ta, ti, ge, ta, ta, ti, ge, ta, ta, ti, ge, ta, ta, in similar ways, in similar ways to this. So first of all, what we're going to do is I'm just going to explain the Korvai to you here. First of all, because it's a very cool structure. It's one of the first Korvais that my great Mridangam teacher Karakudi Krishnamurti first showed me. So it's something that's got some really positive memories. And again, it's another Korvai that I've used in different collaborations, because I find it quite accessible. People can learn the syllables, and it's very memorable for people to you know, to easily recall. I remember I used this in one of my first ever collaborations, which was Taiko to Tabla, which featured a great Japanese percussionist called Joji Hirota. So do check that out. There's some recordings of that on my Bandcamp page, so you can have a look at that. There's some videos here on YouTube as well of some very old gigs, very low res, but that's all I have of those gigs from way back, you know, 30 years ago. So the theme, very easy in comparison to what we've been doing, you know, technically so far. Ta ti ta ti ge ta tum ta tum ta tum ta tum. So that's the basic first part of the theme. Again, the fingering, nothing really to you know, write home about. Ta di, same as ever, could be ta di if you want. Ta di ge na tum, same, always the same. Ta di ge na tum, ta tum ta tum ta tum. I mean, it's obvious. Ta is always going to be that. Tum is always going to be that. So it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't really need a lot of explaining in terms of a fingering. And that's one of the things about the Kanjira, is the more compositions you learn, then the more able you are to just intuit what the fingerings are for the pieces. So ta ti ta ti ge ta tum ta tum ta tum ta tum. Very easy. Ta ti ta ti ge ta tum ta tum ta tum ta tum. Next line, we've got two amendments to the next line. So the first amendment is obvious and is linked to what we've done before. So if we had ta di, then we're just going to have di in the beginning of the second line. So di ta ti ge ta tum ta tum, but ta tum ta tum ta tum becomes longer. So in the first line we had ta tum ta tum ta tum. In this line, ta tum ta tum ta tum, slightly longer. Di ta ti ge ta tum ta tum ta tum ta tum. So the first two lines, 3, 4, and ta ti ta ti ge ta tum ta tum ta tum ta tum. Di ta ti ge ta tum ta tum ta tum ta tum. So it's obvious what's going to happen in the third line is that we're going to have no ta ti, no ti. We're just going to have ta ti ge ta tum, and then the gaps are going to be longer again between the ta tums, because we had a longer gap from the second one. Now the third one will have another longer gap. Ta ti ge ta tum ta tum ta tum ta tum. All first three lines, 3, 4, and ta di da di get da dum da dum da dum da dum. Di da di get da dum da dum da dum da dum. Da di get da dum da dum da dum da da. So we've ended on ta because that's the beginning of the next part of the Korvai. But there's a couple of things that I want to say before that. So firstly, you will start to notice that more and more as we go on, the material that I'm writing, the material that I'm transcribing, I'm not always transcribing it in 4/4. It's being written in its component parts, and that is how that's how it's understood idiomatically. Within the tradition, it's not really thought of. I mean, obviously, it is in the time cycle it's in. You're doing quarter notes through it. You can clap quarter notes, and you can understand it within the time cycle. But the compositional thinking behind it is not that. It's the phrases. Like we were even in a micro sense when we had 332 or 9995. Although they just add up to one bar, as soon as you start to split that over a couple of bars and you divide it up in different ways, then it stops being about the bar lines and becomes about how you're arranging all of the units. And so it's almost like you've got little rhythmic units and they've cut them out and they put them together. And I think it's much easier for Westerners to understand this type of rhythmic composition if you think about it in the component parts and you don't think about it being transcribed in 4/4. Now the irony is that because we're used to reading in 4/4 or the time signature that we're in, sometimes it's easier to be able to read something, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to understand it any better, because it really the key to it is to think of it in all of the component parts. And when you look at the explanation of this, for example, like we've started with da di da di da dum da dum da dum, and then it's changed di da di da dum da dum da dum da dum, and then da di da dum da dum da dum, you realise actually they're all individual sort of rhythmic thoughts, if you like. Now, just to go on and explain one thing further than that it's never random particularly with the South Indian rhythm. It's very much in a shape. So it's not like you'd have, for example, 3, 4, 6. You'd always have 3, 4, 5, or 3, 5, 7. Or 5, 7, 9. Not 5, 7, 8. It would never happen. Everything's very proportional. And if you look at these phrases, the way that they expand is proportional to each line. So each line is, the changes are proportional. So if you've done certain amount of changes between line 1 and line 2, you can't then do different changes when you switch it to line 3. It's got to be proportional. It's got to be, it's just got to flow perfectly downhill. And so that's a big consideration with a lot of their compositional work. So the whole of the first half, 3, 4, and ta di ta di get da dum ta dum ta dum ta dum di ta di get da dum ta dum ta dum ta dum ta di get da dum ta dum ta dum ta ta di ge na dum 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 ta. So that's the second half, and this is really important in South Indian rhythm. This idea, first of all, of having these structures where the first part is based on the themes that have been integrated into the rhythm, and the second part is the manipulation of ta di ge na dum. So this really makes up the module of what is a South Indian Korvai composition. And later on, I'm just going to show you another couple of versions of this very same Korvai with different resolutions and different endings, so you can kind of see actually that it's not fixed. It doesn't always have to be this structure. I mean, it would if you played this once. you'd have to play the same thing 3 times. You couldn't play like a different version of it. You could embellish it. You could add, you could make phrases denser. You could do different things with it, but you couldn't play a different, different configuration of it. Completely not relevant to it. So what we see here is the words ta, di, ge, na, tom. First of all, each equaling 3, each equaling 2, and then you're down to each equaling 1. Ta, ti, ge, na, tom. 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 Ta. So this is the basic composition. So I'll do the whole thing with the Arditala clapping cycle. We're in 8 beats, as we know. 7, 8, and ta, di, ta, ti, ge, da, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom. Di, ta, ti, ge, da, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom. Ta, ti, ge, da, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom, ta, ta, di, ge, da, tom, ta, di, ge, da, tom, ta, ti, ge, na, tom, ta, ti, ge, na, tom, ta, ti, ge, na, tom, ta. So you can see how we've gone from downbeat to downbeat over a few time cycles. Now the changes that you could make would be, for example, ta, ti, ge, na, tom. You could change ta, ti, ta, ge, da, tom, or ge, da, da, ge, da, ge, da, tom. You could do things like that. Even in the beginning, ta, ti, ge, da, tom, ta, tom, ta. You could do ta, ti, ge, da, ge, da, ge, da, tom, ta, tom, ta. But if you've done it to one, you've got to do it to them all. Or it can be a progression. Ta, ti, ge, da, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom. Di, ta, ti, ta, ge, da, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom. Ge, da, ge, da, ge, da, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom. So you see that there's a progression. It's gone up between the levels, but you couldn't do ta, ti, ta, ti, ta, ge, da, tom, ti, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom, and then di, ta, ti, ge, da, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom, ta, tom, and then ge, da, ge, da, ge, da, tom, ta, tom, because it's wonky. It's all the wrong way round. So these basic considerations to the design of their rhythm work is vitally important. Now, the phrases that are introduced into the time cycle, and you'll see this when you get to the play along. It's fairly self-explanatory, so I don't need to go through every single line to explain it to you. But obviously the phrases that will be introduced will be ta-tom, 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 and then ta-tom, 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 and then ta-tom, ta-tom, ta-tom. So they're phrases that will be introduced. And then I introduce ta, ti, ta, ti, ge, da, tom, ta-tom, ta-tom, ta-tom. And then di, ta, ti, ge, da, tom, ta-tom, ta-tom, ta-tom. And then ta, ti, ge, da, tom, ta-tom, ta-tom, ta-ta. And then the korepu is again just the ta-tom, 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 3 phrases. So it's pretty self-explanatory when you look at the play along notation later on. So this is a really great Korvai, and it's worth really spending a bit of time to get this down, because it solves a lot of problems with being able to clap and speak. You see, everything's off the beat there, so it's a pretty cool exercise, even just with the phonetics. So remember, practice with clapping and phonetics, practice playing and speaking, and practice just playing. So they're the three things. So we're going to get on to the play along in a little while, but before we do that, I mean, skip along to that now, if you want, and then come back to this point. But I just want to explain the same Korvai in a couple of different renditions, so you can see what can be changed and how it can be changed. I mean, I know dozens of versions of this particular Korvai, so I'm just going to show you a couple here. So the first example is also in Arditala in 8 beats, but it's a little bit more involved. So in the second half, I mean, the first half is the same. The second half, we start to use ta, ti, ge, na, tom in a slightly different way. So in the original one that we've shown, the syllables start with each ta, ti, ge, na, tom equaling 3, then 2, and then 1. So with this version, we start with each syllable equaling 5, then 4, then 3, then 2, and then 1. So it's a kind of a different, it's a different feel altogether, and a little bit more of a technical challenge. So I'm not going to demonstrate this in terms of it being a play along necessarily. This is just really to demonstrate what's possible and different possibilities with it. So I'll do it a little bit faster. 7, 8, and da di da di get da dum da dum da dum da dum. Di da di get da dum da dum da dum da dum. Da di get da dum da dum dum da dum dum da di get da dum da di get da dum da di get da dum get da di get da dum 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 da da di get da dum 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 da. So with just a few little changes there. In the sevens, for example, at the end, you've 7 7 7, but you could have 7, and then over the space of those 2 sevens, you have 3 sevens as faster triplets. So it's another way of just adding a little bit of spice to it. But you see, ta, ag, di, get, that's 5s. 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 tati again, and you see how that works. I'll just do the whole thing once more so you can hear it. 7 8 and da di da di get da dum da dum da dum da dum di da di get da dum da dum da dum da dum da di get da dum da dum dum da dum dum da di get na dum da di get da 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 dum da, just with the straight sevens. So the next is to look at it in a different time cycle. So I'm going to just look at it one more version of it, and this is in Misra Japu, which is 7. So this is a pretty easy conversion actually. It's pretty much the whole structure of the piece is the same, except at the end, instead of having tati gena dum tati gena dum tati gena dum, it's tati geta dum tati geta dum tati geta dum ta. That's it. It's that easy to convert it into Misra Japu. So that will sound like this. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. 1 2 4 5 6 7. Ta di ta di get da dum ta dum ta dum ta dum. Di ta di get da dum ta dum ta dum ta dum. Ta di get da dum ta dum 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 dum. Ta di get da dum 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 ta. 4 5 6. So you see, it's pretty straightforward. Of course, there's a challenge. You've got to do the different time cycle, and you can learn these Korvais in all lots of different time cycles. So, just to give you a glimpse of how all these building blocks, it's not like you're learning one isolated thing and then that's all it's good for. It's like you're learning these things and they've got multiple applications. So it's a really exciting thing. There's a lot more stuff in my book on Hudson music. There's loads and loads of examples that you can play along to, and different stuff. Not long play-alongs like this, but grooves and a lot of explanation, history of the instrument, and all of that stuff. So do have a peep at that. Check out my Bandcamp page, and most importantly, do like and subscribe here, and share as much as you can if you like it. 3 4 and ti ke ta tom ta 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 tom ta tom ta tom ti ke ta tom ta tom ta tom ta tom ke ta tom ta tom tom ta tom tom ta ti ke ta tom ta ti ke ta tom ke ta tom ke ta tom ke ta tom ta 3 4 and ta tim na ta ta tim na ke ta tim na ta tom ta tim na ta tim na ke ta tim na ta tom ta tim na ta tim na ta tim ta tom ta tim na ta tim na ta tim ta tom ta tim na ta tim na tim ta ki ta tom ta tim na ta tim na tim ta ki ta tom ta tim na ta tim na ta ti ke ta tom ta tim na ta tim na ta ti ke ta tom ta tim na ta tim na ta ti ke ta tom ta tim na ta tim na ta ti ke ta tom ta tim na ta tim na ta ti ke ta tom ta tim na ta tim na ta ti ke ta tom ta tim na ta tom tim na ta tom tim ta tom tim ta tom ta ki ta tom ta ki ta tom ti ta ti ke ta tom ta ti ta ti ke ta tom 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 ta ti ta ti ke ta tom 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 ta ke ta tom ta ti ke ta tom ta ti ke ta tom ke ta tom ta